Ready? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you all here. We want to talk to our citizens a little bit about the situation now, and I wanted to acknowledge firsthand the injustice and the tragic death of George Floyd in the morning that this nation and this community are a part of. Everyone is experiencing that tragic loss. I want to commend the individuals who have associated over the past couple of days to peacefully exercise their First Amendment right. And there have been many who have been very peaceful. It is important that we remain respectful of each other and of our community. Unfortunately, there are also those among us who have displayed blatant disregard for the welfare of others. And to that end, we are announcing that we're enacting an 8 p.m. curfew effective tonight. This decision was not made easily, but it comes at the recommendation of our partners and the Chief of Police. We put our heads together and decided what was right for our community. We also visited with other regional partners in support of the whole region. The curfew, again, will be immediate and effective for the next 72 hours, and we have decided it will be citywide. It's a difficult decision to make as we have just begun reopening businesses after the many restrictions from COVID. However, we must prioritize the safety and the health of our community. Making it citywide protects the entire city, and everyone deserves protection, not just a few areas. We are where we are at this moment because we need a collective consciousness and a collective response. Dr. King himself said, "No one is free until we are all free." My prayer today is for peace and calm, but not peace at the expense of justice. You can subdue a fever and not heal the sickness in the body. Let's stop talking about treating the symptoms and instead treat and heal the body. But what that does mean, and how do we do that, is very difficult. I know difficult work still remains ahead of us. Much has been done, but there's still work to be done. A tough look from each of us in the mirror every day makes us realize that we must continue working. It's not easy. It is a long road ahead. Our own police monitor, Kim Neal, where's Kim? Right there, is with us today, and you will hear from her shortly and the hard work that she is doing. Furthermore, difficult conversations are not productive unless everyone is listening. So I will announce today that we are moving City Council meeting tomorrow. The 7 p.m. meeting will be held at 3 p.m. on Thursday to ensure that we can hear from all our residents. With an 8 o'clock curfew, we would not have been able to hear from everyone tomorrow night. So before I turn it over to Chief Krause, I want to applaud the Chief, our command staff, everyone that's been involved in this response. It truly has been done with compassion and humility. So Chief, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So after 2 nights of mostly peaceful protests here in Fort Worth over the murder of George Floyd, last night we had another group form up about twice as big as we'd had previously. Almost 300 people showed up, and they began protesting by marching downtown, which they had done the previous 2 nights. Our approach to this had been to use our downtown bike officers to make sure that they are able to peacefully protest and that they would not be encumbered by traffic. So the bike officers would block the intersections and make sure they had the platform to conduct their peaceful protests. Last night, the group decided to leave downtown and to head west on West 7th Street. We were fine with them doing that. There's no difference between that street and the streets downtown as far as their ability to use that as a platform. However, as we left the downtown area, our bike officers heard from people inside the crowd and also heard with their own ears that there was an element inside the crowd that was planning to cause damage when they got to West 7th Street. At that point, we decided to stop the ingress into West 7th. The bridge over the Trinity was a natural funnel point, so we stopped traffic on the west end of the bridge there and asked them to turn around. About half of the group ended up turning around and heading back toward downtown. The other half of the group stayed, and a standoff ensued between the police and the protesters. This was not a physical standoff. It was just the protesters exercising their First Amendment right to assemble in free speech. After dark, officers started being attacked with what we first thought were water bottles, but we've since come to believe those bottles filled with bleach because of the empty bleach containers we found on the bridge behind the crowd. That followed with frozen water bottles and rocks being hurled at the officers. At that point, officers, a SWAT unit, they deployed smoke, which is not gas, smoke and flashbangs in an attempt to get the crowd to disperse. That was preceded by 3 requests over the PA system for the crowd to disperse with warnings of what we were about to do. Some of the people heeded those warnings and left, others did not. Those warnings were spaced out several minutes apart. We made sure that the crowd had an avenue of escape. If they chose to leave, they could just go back eastbound across the bridge, and they would not be impeded. When the crowd refused to disperse and they were hurling the frozen water bottles and the rocks at the officers, the decision to go ahead and move on them was made. The decision to use gas was approved. At that point, somebody threw a pyrotechnic device into the lines of our officers, which exploded. You may have seen that on the live feed. And at that point, we did deploy the gas. The gas had an effect. The individuals on the bridge ran eastbound across the bridge back toward downtown, but then began to scatter. We take very seriously people's constitutional rights to assemble and to peacefully protest. It's something we did not want to interfere with. That's why we start every protest with a soft touch, the bike unit. We have to be prepared and have people in reserve that can respond if necessary, but we would rather that not happen. In this instance, we were not given a choice by the actions of the group, and we had to respond. I do want to point out that not everyone on that bridge was intent on causing damage. There were some people there to intentionally, peacefully protest, and thankfully they made the decision to leave when they were warned. Officers ended up chasing several different groups of individuals. Some individuals were able to get into the Montgomery Plaza area after the bridge was cleared. There was damage to several businesses in that area and also to at least one business downtown, that damage being in the form of broken windows. We had 3 officers injured during the event and made approximately 50 arrests of individuals who were not complying. At this point, I'll turn it over to our police monitor, Kim Neal.
Thank you, Chief. I just want to start off saying that my heart, both professionally and personally, goes out to anybody that feels like they've experienced any type of injustice. With that being said, our office, which has been in existence now for about 3 months, has been working very hard to meet with a lot of folks that I'm sure that everyone has talked to in a lot of groups to see exactly what folks want from our office, what they expect from our office. We are spending a lot of time collaborating with people. Of course, before COVID-19 hit, we were able to meet with people face-to-face. We've since condensed that to WebEx meetings and face-to-face when permitted. But, 6 of the key functions of our office, and I just wanted to mention these just for everybody's recognition, is that we're going to be looking at both complaints and commendations and reviews of the police department. We're also in the process now of looking at police practices, policies, and procedures, and seeing how those impact our citizen interactions with police officers and how we can make that our vehicle better. We want to do community engagement. We have heard that from several community groups. That community engagement is very important. I feel it is important, and that's community engagement that involves both the citizens and the police, and we plan to do that as soon as we are able to do that. We want to also do periodic reporting where we will look at these patterns and reviews and be able to provide the public, the community, with any trends or patterns that we see as it relates to circumstances, allegations against police officers, as well as anything demographic related. And then finally, and most importantly, we want to play a major role, and we will play a major role in the mediation efforts between the police department and the community to, again, address whatever the community feels are injustices against them, as well as participate collaboratively in any problem-solving efforts that we can. I'm a strong advocate of problem-solving, and we feel very strongly that we can do that here in Fort Worth and do it very proactively. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. With that, we'd be glad to entertain a few questions. Luke?
Could somebody speak to the diversity within the police department here in Fort Worth? I know during the recent culture task force, it was found that there was a lack of diversity in some specific units. And just looking at the photos last night, it seemed like quite a few, most of the people on the bridge were white. So I wanted to see if there's been any, update on efforts to diversify the department.
Chief?
Yeah, so those efforts are ongoing. It's hard to diversify the department until we get new recruits in there. We are one class in since the Race and Culture Task Force made the recommendations. Until we are able to push a lot more officers into that we won't be able to have an effect overall numbers. As far as the diversity within the department, within specific groups, one of the teams out there was the SRT team and the SWAT team. Both of those were identified as areas in the Race and Culture Task Force where we needed more diversity. However, again, we have to have vacancies occur in those units before we can fill them. We do have a policy for filling those that includes looking at the needs of the community to inform those decisions on which individual officer applying for that job should get it. So we do have, and have in the past couple of years, have ranking supervisors actually bypass one or two people on the list to go down and get somebody they think is the best fit for that department or that unit.
While you're up there, can you talk a little bit more about the officers that were hurt? How were they hurt, and what are their conditions?
And so I had 3 officers hurt. One was hit in the elbow by an ice ball and has bruising there. Another officer broke his leg in a foot pursuit of one of the individuals who was damaging property in Montgomery Street area or Montgomery Plaza. And the third individual, just a second, injured his knee, twisted his knee during the operation. So we debrief every operation, and we will debrief this one as well to see what we could have done better. One of the things I'm very proud of with our commanders, both the ones out in the field and the ones at the command post, is that they specifically were speaking to, we don't want to act too quickly. We don't want to use gas before we absolutely have to. We have not used gas on a crowd in Fort Worth in approximately 30 years is what I'm told. I didn't want to be the one to bring that back. Unfortunately, the rocks, the ice-filled bottles, the bleach-filled bottles, and the pyrotechnic inside the officer line, there is a point where you have to use the tools that you're trained to use.
You found empty bleach bottles, but did you actually find any of the water bottles filled with bleach?
No, I don't know that we ever went back and looked at that.
In terms of the curfew, how do you plan on enforcing that? And, if you're somebody who has a late night job, should you be worried about getting home after 10?
What what we will do is, much like our response to the COVID pandemic, education will be our primary goal. We are not there to stop the individuals who are returning from a job or going to a late-night job. Our goal is to address groups that are gathering for an illegal purpose.
And the emergency declaration specifically excludes coming and going from work or school. And I believe we'll make a copy of that available for all of y'all.
What's the status and timeline right now for the Citizens Review Board?
There's no set timeline right now. We're still meeting with the community, both community and criminal justice professionals to see exactly what direction we should go in and what format that should be in. So we don't have a set timeline as of yet.
Mayor, I know that you said that the curfew begins at 8 o'clock each time. What time does the curfew end in the subsequent mornings?
6 a.m., I believe. I'll look at the order, but I believe 6 is what we settled on.
In regards to the discussion on whether you needed or didn't need curfew, can you give me an idea on how that discussion played out? And was there any sense too that because there was a curfew east of us, that people may have made their way here, and so that necessitated?
Certainly, because we live in a large region that's well-connected and people do go back and forth between the regions, the fact that both Dallas and Denton had curfews probably influenced our decision some. But overall, it was just made on the threats, the things that have happened and the perceived threats that might potentially be out there already. And we had city manager, myself, the police chief, Kim and Christina Brooks, our diversity director, many people, Jay Chapa, assistant city manager, at the table to discuss it. And we weighed in with council members also.
Was it helpful to study what happened in Dallas on Friday night to help you be more prepared for last night?
I would say that when you're talking to other cities, it's always helpful to know. I've been on a couple of different calls with the top 25 to 30 cities in the nation. Chief and I were on one Saturday afternoon, I think it was, with the mayors and the police chiefs in several of those cities. And it's always helpful to see what others are dealing with and how they're doing it.
Do you think there's an issue right now with trust between the community and police?
No, the community at large, I would say, the trust is good with the police department. This is a terrible situation. Emotions are high, probably having been inside from COVID quarantine and isolation drives a little bit of this too, but I would say our trust is still there.
Can the chief talk a little bit about the decision again to use the tear gas and if he was directly involved in that moment, or if that was the decision made by the
Chief?
officers in the field?
Yeah, so I was at the command post. I made that decision with input from my commanders.
Just from a policing perspective, you said the vast majority of these protesters were peaceful the whole night, but officers overheard some talk of violence. At what point do you make that decision? Because, what's to keep a few bad actors from just shutting down every protest, saying we're going to break stuff?
And unfortunately, that is happening. You have well-meaning, well-intended people putting these protests and rallies and marches together because they have a legitimate anger of what's going on, and they want to make their voice heard. And then you have people with ulterior motives, and they infiltrate the group, and their goal is to vandalize, loot, and take the discussion in a different direction. There's no vetting process for these organizations. They're, like I said, they're planning with the best of intention to have a peaceful, meaningful march, and it gets hijacked by people with other means.
I just want to bring up again the Citizens Review Board one more time, because again, part of the reason for these protests is people aren't feeling heard. But again, this is something that people have tried to be heard about for years now. Again, there's still no timeline.
Yeah, well, and one thing, we couldn't predict COVID-19, of course. And so that's why I wanted to focus on the fact that we have been proactively meeting with community groups. And, regarding your question about the trust between the police department, I can say that in all of my meetings, and we've had dozens of them since day one, since the first week I started, In all of those community meetings, everyone has consistently said they have confidence in the police department. What they have concerns about is when they feel that certain civil rights are impacted. And so, but overall and overwhelmingly, folks have confidence in the police department. And I can tell you, both for myself and our deputy monitor, Denise Rodriguez, we've worked in this aspect in a lot of different ways. And I can tell you that Fort Worth is a phenomenal city, that the relationships that Fort Worth Police Department has built with its community is phenomenal. And so we're just working to improve on those relationships and improve on that. So it's not that we are moving forward with, as it relates to the recommendation regarding the review panel, we just had some hiccups along the way.
We said from the get-go that we would not rush into the Citizens Review Board, and our citizens agreed with that it needs to be in the format that fits for Fort Worth, that everyone feels heard and everyone feels like they have a chance to visit with the Citizens Review Board if needed. So we're not delaying it, but we're not rushing in and getting something that doesn't work for us. One more? Any more questions?
Back to the incarcerating these people, and you've already been through the COVID-19 situation. How long do you hold them, or, it's got to be a fine balance between holding on to them and letting them back into the community. Is it one of those you're just going to hold?
Anyone that's arrested, or as you said, incarcerated, will have due process. They'll be treated just like anyone else. And many of the violations would be code. Yeah, COVID's certainly code, but the others are
Penal
class.
code offenses, Class B use.
Class B is what I was looking for, sorry, Class B issues. And everybody that is arrested will be due process, just as if anything.
But is there a concern with the COVID-19 getting large groups of people and having
Clearly, we're still dealing with COVID-19. The governor's recommendation is 6 feet social distancing, and you can see in council chambers, that's what we're doing here. And it's always worrisome when you have big groups. And we will have to see, as this progresses, what happens in the next 10 days to 2 weeks.
Mayor, is this curfew indefinite, or is there an end date?
The end date is 5 o'clock on Thursday, and council will take it back up at our 3 o'clock meeting on Thursday, hear from the experts whether they want to extend it or let it expire.
Did this appear to be mostly local people, or were there people coming in to participate?
As was alluded to earlier, there is concern once Dallas and Denton enacted their curfew that would cause individuals to come over here. We did see that in social media. I believe as the Star Telegram reported or quoted somebody saying, Fort Worth doesn't have a curfew, let's go over there. If I'm misquoting the source, I'm sorry. Read a lot this week. But we did see that. A lot of the individuals that showed up last night were not part of the groups that gathered the previous 2 nights. A large number of that group were the people that we were having problems with, that were not obeying the announcements over the PA to turn around. And approximately, or 25 of the 50 arrests were people that do not live in Fort Worth.
Thank you all for being here today and for your interest. And Lake and Repair, our comms director is here, Michelle is here, Goo, and Buddy is here from Police Department. Chief Henry is here from Fire if you have questions that pertains to fire. Thank you. All right.
Few minutes until I'll see you.
Somewhere, somewhere.
Yeah, next door.